who did play in the Reliaquest Bowl. I wrote about him yesterday, Jalen Milroe. It sounded like that was his last game at Alabama.
This podcast is going to be 90 minutes, by the way, just so you know.
I know. It sounded like this was his last game at Alabama. I wrote, does he go to the draft? Does he go to the portal? I think it's probably the portal. But it was amazing to me, Ari. Put that story out. And you know what happens when our guys at On3 put a graphic out, right? So they put a graphic out. And I was just overwhelmed watching the responses to it of how many people just hate Jalen Milroe. Like, this is not a like reasonable critique of his play. Because Jalen Milroe, you look at his numbers, if you've watched him play the last 2 years, he's absolutely not perfect. But he's an above average college quarterback. And these people act like he couldn't be the third stringer at Bowling Green. And I don't get it. Like, where's this hate coming from?
I saw something about him like shooting an NIL promo on the field before the game. I don't know if that's real or not. But like also too, like, you know how Alabama fans feel about their team.
Yeah.
And you know that they didn't reach their potential this year, and certainly understand that as that graphic was written or put out and your story was written, that they were at a pretty low point, right? Like, not only did they not make the playoffs,
but I don't even think it was Alabama fans necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, it was some Alabama fans, but it was a lot of just random regular fans. And they're like, he'll never make it to the NFL. I'm like, he's going to be on an NFL roster by 2026 at the latest. He's only got one more year of eligibility. So
let's get into
he's going to be on an NFL roster at some point.
Because I read your column yesterday, and I do think that this like Jalen Hurts comparison seems to make some sense. So why don't you walk us through?
Well, it's funny because people only think about Jalen Hurts now, or Jalen Hurts coming out of Oklahoma. And these Alabama fans were even saying, did Jalen Hurts comparison? No. I watched Jalen Hurts at Alabama. I covered like half the games his last season as the starter there. He could barely complete a forward pass at the end of that season. Now, yes, he did stay with Alabama another year. He did come in and save their asses in the SEC championship game in 2018. But in 2017, the receivers were about to revolt because they wanted Tua to throw the ball to them because Tua was better at throwing the ball to them. Like, that was real. Jalen Hurts was not viewed as a very good quarterback by his own teammates.
And those throws that he could not make at that time, Andy, come into my head when I'm watching the Eagles now.
Because he makes them all the time now.
And I still think that like Jalen Hurts might be one of the single most impressive individual transformations I've ever seen.
Yes. If only the guy who helped him transform was in some dire straits and needed a quarterback right now. Oh, wait. He is. Like, if Jalen Hurts or if Jalen Milroe decides to go into the portal, which I think is what he's going to do, if I am Lincoln Riley, I am calling immediately because I think they can help each other. I think both of them can help each other.
Yeah. We don't know who USC's quarterback is going to be right now, but I feel like you would feel moderately better about USC if you knew it was Jalen Milroe. Is that fair?
I think so. And I trust Lincoln as much as, listen, I've been as critical of Lincoln Riley as anybody, but I trust him with quarterbacks. His track record's pretty impeccable. And what he did with Jalen Hurts, and we don't know how much of that's him, how much of that's Jalen Hurts, how much of that's, whatever trainer Jalen Hurts was working. I think he's a Quincy Avery guy. But the transformation was real. And the thing is, no, they're not exactly the same. Yes, they are both large, fast people who grew up in Houston, who could throw a nice deep ball at first, but the rest of it was a work in progress. There is more to it than that. Jalen Hurts, fairly good at processing, really good at getting your offense down quickly, better at taking care of the ball than Jalen Milroe has been in the last few years. So it's not a perfect apples to apples comparison. But if you look at the skill set, Yeah, he could help. And being in a system that is, I think Lincoln Riley has shown he's really good at designing the system around the quarterback's strengths. And that's what needs to happen is he needs to go somewhere where the system is designed around his strengths. Like the folks who came from Washington and were used to working with Michael Penix Jr., Michael Penix Jr. is a very different quarterback. Like Michael Penix Jr. is a laser guided missile system. Like he is pinpoint, precise. He throws people open. Jalen Milroe doesn't do that.
Yeah, I think
But that doesn't mean he can't be an effective college quarterback.
The thing that's disappointing, I think, and like maybe to wrap it back around to Kalen DeBoer, because you have been mocking me for a few days now about this A+ thing. The thing that is disappointing is that Kalen DeBoer came to Bama as somebody who, was viewed as an offensive quarterback guru, right? Like, I mean, what they did with Penix, what they did with Washington's offense, was super impressive. Like they were aggressive, they were innovative, they were edgy, they had stuff up their sleeves. Like Penix got better as the year went on. And it's not like Michael Penix Jr. was like this. He had flashes throughout his entire career, but the games and the way that he played a year ago was, got him up into the first round. And granted, I know that they did have Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan on their team, and that certainly helps. But like there was this notion or this thought that once Kalen DeBoer got his hands wrapped around some of the talent on that roster, that Jalen Milroe was going to have a renaissance or an explosion of evolution. You were going to have a bunch of points, and Ryan Williams was going to come in and save the day. And it's like, if you go look at their two most embarrassing losses this year, it's like they couldn't score in either of them, and it's like that to me would be alarming.
Yeah, well, and so we're going to find out what happens next. If Milroe's gone, then does that mean that the Ty Simpson era starts at Alabama? Does that mean the Keelan Russell era starts at? We'll find out. But there's a lot to unpack there as the season goes on.